Hello and welcome. One of the most fundamental things for any PDM administrator to understand is how the permission settings in PDM work. Permissions are one of the cornerstones of any successful PDM system, and a PDM administrator should know how permissions are listed in PDM, what they pertain to, and what the consequences of assigning a permission are. By successfully setting up permissions, you reduce a lot of work going forward when implementing your PDM system. Here I have in the administration tool a user group open. The group is called editors, and we'll just take a look for this group what permissions are available and how we can set those and the consequences of setting those permissions. In PDM, for any group or user, permissions are broken down into four here: administrative permissions, folder permissions, state permissions, and transition permissions. Administrative permissions as their name suggests, allow the user or group to administrate certain aspects of the PDM Vault in the background. So permissions, by the way, in PDM are generally listed in this format: can do something. The idea is psychologically, when you're ticking these boxes, you are then giving the user or group the ability to do that action. So you can see on here things like can update workflows, or can update variables, or can update toolbox settings. They all refer to the various administrative nodes inside the PDM administration tool. Generally, these permissions are given to um, administrators rather than normal day-to-day PDM users. Some that might be given to normal day-to-day PDM users are the ones that I've got ticked here, which is can accept tasks to execute on a host. So in PDM Professional or in PDM Standard since 2018, if you are using tasks, for example, to create PDFs of drawings, those tasks are typically carried out on a machine, or what we call a host, which has SolidWorks and PDM installed. So by allowing the host machine to accept these tasks, which is, it may not be a server machine, it may be just a simple user's machine, you need to enable this permission in order for that person's machine to act as a host. This one also here can update search favorites. So again, in PDM Professional, when using the search cards, you can set up search favorites for searches that you are repeating, and you can update the conditions of those, but only if you have that permission. Can update search favorites there. So that's the administrative permissions there. The next level down is folder permissions. As you very well know, PDM is based on a Windows folder structure, or at least the Vault view that you and your day-to-day users see is based on a folder structure. Clicking on any folder will bring up the list of permissions for a particular folder there. The list of permissions is always the same, and whatever level you assign permissions at, subfolders automatically inherit the folder permissions unless you specifically click on those subfolders and add or remove inherited permissions from the folder above. So again, in the folder permissions, most of the permissions are quite straightforward. So at this level, can the user or group, for example, add a file, add or rename a file, or add or rename a folder? Can they overwrite the latest version during check-in? This can be quite useful if when they're checking in is just a very simple change, such as modifying a dimension or correcting a spelling mistake. Can they actually check out the file to work on it? Can they delete the file or folder? Can they destroy? So PDM has different permissions for deleting and destroying. Can they move a file or move a folder? Can they actually see the file? If they can delete it, can they recover it from PDM's recycle bin? Can they see the computed bill of materials? And can they see the different versions of files as well? So if you have assigned permissions, so you can see as I click on any of these subfolders, they are automatically inherited. If you have assigned permissions at a subfolder level, then a good way to check is using the second tab up here called Assign Folder Permission. So you can see here that this group has permissions defined at 3 separate levels there. Okay, and from here we can choose if we want to remove or add any more folder levels as well. So that is the folder permission. So where a file is or files are in the folder structure of the Vault, what permissions does this particular group have to be able to work on those files? Then we come to what are known as state permissions. Now, state permissions are to do with the workflow. So a workflow is really the lifeblood of PDM. Every document that goes into PDM enters a workflow, and a workflow helps control progress. So if you're using PDM Professional, you might have various different workflows here. So here I've got one for my design workflow, which uses a numeric revision scheme, and I can see the states in the workflow there. As I click on a state, you can see that I have some permissions listed, and again, the list of permissions is the same per state. It's just which ones you tick or untick that dictates what permission this group has in those various states. So work in progress generally will be your first or initial state for the workflow. So you can see here you can see add file, you can see overwrite latest version, check out, delete, destroy, move file, read file, contents there as well. The key with folder and state permissions is that for users to work effectively, you've got to have the correct combination between state and folder permission. So if work in progress, for example, is your initial state where you first add new files and check them in, so if you've got the add permission in the state ticked, but you don't have it in the folder that you're trying to check into, then you won't be able to add the file to the vault. So that is quite often what trips people up, is not having the correct combination of folder permissions and state permissions. So if you want people to be able to add a file, a new file into the vault, first check that they've got the correct add permissions for that folder, but also for the initial state of what workflow they're trying to check the file into as well. Transition permissions. So transitions are used to move a file from one state to another. So here you can see a list of transitions and what state they're coming from and what state they're going to. And clicking on any transition, there's only 2 permissions available for any transition, whether you're allowed to permit it. And this option here called disallow sequential state changes. This option for sequential state changes is generally used when, for example, maybe you've got a user who is a designer but also a checker. So they might do a drawing and then submit it for checking. Well, you don't want them to necessarily be able to check their own work. So for a particular option like check is okay, you might say disallow sequential state changes if they're both a designer and a checker, or going a step further if they're both a checker and a approver. There as well. So that's how permissions are listed in PDM. Again, the key really is making sure, particularly for folder and state permissions, that they have the correct combination in the folder and in the appropriate state there. Thank you.